here I was being asked to preach when the pastor was gone, to fill in for pastors in other churches when they were gone. And I'm thinking,
was that kind of overwhelming?
Oh my goodness.
Whoa.
Yes, overwhelming. And yet through it all, I loved it. And now the conflict was beginning between what I was doing and where I was feeling called to. And so somebody once said to me, Kevin, if there's anything you can do other than the ministry, do it.
Welcome, everyone, to podcast number 262, Renew Your Mind. With us today, we have Senior Pastor Kevin Harbin, and we have our Youth and Family Director and Praise Band Leader, Jordan Kettlewell, and myself, Dana Hall, as the moderator. And we're interviewing the new guy, Pastor Kevin. We asked him a few questions last podcast, and we want to continue to ask a few more. One question that we had was, what was your call to ministry? You told us how you stepped into this Methodist church and it was very different. So, yeah, how did that come about?
Sure. So fall of 1986, I made the decision to follow Jesus. And now I'm spending time. I'm a sales manager. I'd been in a couple of different industries, from a radio station in Detroit to the telecommunications world. Mm-hmm. And long and short of it was, I enjoyed what I was doing. Mm-hmm. And I feel like I was pretty good at it, because make a friend, make a sale. And I'm pretty good at making friends. But I was getting involved in small group studies. And in the midst of some of the small group studies, one day I said, boy, if I keep this up, if I keep growing at this pace, if I keep doing what I'm doing, I just might go off the edge. And somebody said, well, what is that edge? And I said, I don't know, become a pastor. And I didn't even know what I was saying at that moment, but those people kind of loved me through that to say, why aren't you considering it? Mm-hmm. Is God calling you to that? But I had a problem. I have a good vocation, and it's compensating me okay. Mm-hmm. And it would mean an abrupt change to everything I do. I used to interview for jobs. I don't know anything about this world of being a pastor, or even the denomination at that time, United Methodist Church. Mm-hmm. So one day, I just knew that I need to share with others about my call to ministry, how God was at work in my life. And I went on the particular day that I was going to go and meet with a person in the authority structure of our former denomination. On that particular day, the owner of the telephone industry was in our town. And he saw me in the hallway, and I was one of his outside sales managers. And he says, Kevin, I want to talk to you. Well, normally you don't want that conversation. And so we get into his office and he goes, are you happy? And I said, yes, I'm happy. Now I knew what this meant for him. Mm-hmm. Happiness is money. And remember, I have a problem with money. It's my God. It's my weakness. It's my kryptonite. And so, but I also know to him that money is the answer to every problem. And you need a nice home here and a nice home there. And you needed all the material trappings that wealth can bring. And but here I knew I'm about to go and interview with a person about a call to ministry, and I don't even know what that job pays. And yet I was so settled in the peace of that, knowing that the pastor I saw seemed to have a roof over his head and food on the table for his kids, et cetera, et cetera. Mm-hmm. So he asked me multiple times, are you happy? How much are you making? He asked the secretary to bring on all my financials, and he says, Kevin, I want you happier. On Monday, this was a Friday, and on Monday, I want an answer to what it's going to make you happy. And I was dreading Monday, but I was also believing he would forget what he said on Friday. But I saw him on Monday, and he didn't.
Oh, man.
And let's just say, in that very moment, I felt like Jesus, who was baptized and then led into the wilderness to be tempted by the devil. And everything put before Jesus, and he resisted it all. And I'll never forget that experience. And so my call to ministry was very formational in my life. But of course, now at that time, I'm also married. And so that means, can two walk together unless they agree? Well, Ellen was very much in agreement. And so, long story short, we made our way to seminary in 1993, and then I graduated December of 96.
Wow. So what happened between 89 and 93?
Well, again, if those listen to the last podcast, amazing things happen when you read the Bible.
So that was that.
Yeah,
That
it
you
was
were
just
still
all very formational.
Wow.
And, here's a church that really doesn't know me very well, but they're asking me to get involved. And, if you have certain giftings, it's pretty neat when you become aware of those giftings. I was a sales manager. So part of that occupation, if you will, is instructing others. And so that was a natural talent, but now I'm beginning to learn something about spiritual gifting and teaching and how what we learn needs to be applied. That's the contribution that teaching makes. And so here I was being asked to preach when the pastor was gone, to fill in for pastors in other churches when they were gone. And I'm thinking,
was that kind of overwhelming?
oh my goodness.
Whoa.
Yes, overwhelming. And yet through it all, I loved it. And now the conflict was beginning between what I was doing and where I was feeling called to. And so somebody once said to me, Kevin, if there's anything you can do other than the ministry, do it. I struggled with what they meant because I am good in sales. I can do that. So if I can do anything else, well, then what you're saying is I should stay in sales. Well, they weren't trying to answer the question for me. They just said, if there's anything you can do other than the ministry, do it. Because they know the call to ministry. They know the rough road that it is.
I see.
And if there's anything you can do, you do it. But while I was in seminary, I began to realize there is nothing else I can do. I cannot go back like the fishermen with Jesus who went back to fishing. I couldn't go back.
Yeah.
And I still think about it today. If I wasn't a pastor, what would I do? I'd go into the world of sales. But now all of a sudden it's very unappetizing.
Yeah.
So that's what happened.
Wow. Okay. So then take us through how many churches? I mean, after that, then where did you go?
Yeah. So in our former denomination, we didn't have choices of where we would go.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
They would just send us. But I was coming out mid-year. In our former denomination, appointments would begin July 1. But my seminary, a lot of times it would take people not 3 years, which is what they say in their paperwork, but it would take them 4 or more if they had children and a spouse. And I had both. And we had 4 kids in seminary under the age of 5. And it was a challenge, but I pushed through and I got done in 3.5 years, which just meant I was ready for an appointment in the middle of the year. But now I, quote unquote, get the leftovers. All right. And when I looked at the churches that were a part of our conference, I knew there was 2 churches that I could potentially go to. One was as an associate at a large church, which really did not appeal to me because then I'm just going to be the gopher pastor. And I didn't want that. 2, it would be a small country church. And when I got the phone call, that was where they sent me, to the small country church in the thumb of Michigan, population 600. To the people listening from Fairgrove, who are now also a global Methodist church, that's where I began.
Wow.
2 churches, Fairgrove and Guilford. Guilford's now closed. And then I was sent to St. Charles and Brant, another 2-point charge. By 2-point charge, we just simply mean I had the honor of serving 2 different churches that were a certain set of miles between each other, neighboring communities. After that, though, I did go to Imlay City, and I served there for 9 years.
Mm-hmm.
After that, I went to a church in the Flint area for 4.5 years, for 4 years, and then to Fraser down in Southeast Michigan. Then, there was a little bit of a detour, but then I ended up in Houghton Lake, and now here I am in Guilford. So I've had the privilege of packing multiple times, different than some, but every time we moved, what I love about God is that many times what he asks us to do doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense for me, a city boy, to go to Fairgrove, Michigan, population 600, but I loved it. It didn't make sense to necessarily go to St. Charles because that was another 2 churches, and I was prepared for more. But it was near my mom who lived in the Saginaw area. So God had a wonderful plan for us while we were there, because while we were there, she was sick. And it was just a very important time. But I also had more to learn. I just probably didn't know that. And then when we went to Imlay City, there was great grace there. It was a very good time. And that's where a lot of my kids graduated from high school, or at least 3 of the older 4. And
where exactly is Imlay City?
Oh, Imlay City. That's Imlay. It's on M69 between Flint and Port Huron.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
It's near Lapeer, so forth.
Got it.
They wouldn't call themselves a suburb of Detroit, but Detroit's just growing and pushing out. And a lot of people who worked in Detroit would move to Imlay City simply because you could get 5 acres or an acre, and it seemed like a safer world.
Sure.
Yeah.
Wow.
So along the way, just lots of learning. Sometimes where I am today, I'd love to go back to Fairgrove and say, you deserved the pastor I am today, but thank you for contributing towards making me the pastor that I am today.
Yeah, I guess what I was going to ask was, were you not frustrated, but I guess I'll use the word frustrated with having to move so often? I mean, was that a big deal for your family, I would think, to move, or...
Yeah, great question. So when you learn more about the way that our former denomination worked things, we called it the appointment system. You're at the pleasure of the bishop, who then has, certain people that he listens to, or she, to be able to make good decisions. But we're talking about a big system. Yeah. And where I serve is just one little, dot in the bigger system. And so I quickly learned that it's very important that we learn that we live under authority, and that we have to trust authority.
Sure.
Whether we necessarily like them or agree with them on all things, there's a trust that's involved, that there's something bigger at work than just my comfort and convenience. And when we follow Jesus, it's not always comfortable, and it's not always convenient. And so we learned this quickly. Now, one of the blessings my wife was to our family was the revelation that she had that every January is when our former denominational cabinet, the district superintendents and the bishops, would meet about where people will be in July. And so she did a tremendous job at an age-appropriate level of talking to our kids to say, now, this month, people who are in authority of your dad are meeting and gathering. And if they decide to move, we have always said, we will live under the authority. Whether we understand it or not, we will just trust that in all things, God will work for the good. And so those moves were always talked about in advance so that our kids were always ready for the possibility. Didn't mean they were always ready.
Yeah.
But
at least you had the conversation. Yeah.
We had the conversation. Yeah. So we were very proactive about that. And one of my sons went into the Marines. And I might tell the story a little different than he might. But when he was done with boot camp, he introduced us to his drill sergeant. And it kind of went something like this. drill sergeant, sir, I'd like you to meet my parents. Two things. One, they are the reason why I was not afraid of you. But also, he had already learned so much about authority in the home that he understood authority in the Marines.
Oh.
And so we'd like to believe we've really passed on a lesson to our kids about what it means to live under authority, even when sometimes we don't understand it. Because ultimately, we live under God's authority. We don't always understand what he's doing in our lives. Why is he messing with us?
Yeah.
But we always have to hope that there's a good out there. And so Ellen just did an amazing job.
Wow. Okay.
That's impressive, because I would imagine that could, if not handled appropriately, like that could take a serious toll. It's one thing for a pastor and the pastor's spouse to both be on board, but the kids are just kind of at the mercy. They didn't agree to it necessarily. They were born into it, and so I can see where, and I know that it does happen, that causes some damage, and so front loading that and having them be ready, I think that was a really good way to do it.
And pastors aren't the only ones. There's so many other industries out there where there's
Yeah.
different types of sacrifices that are made. And so, what we try to say about parenting is, our task is to steward over our kids and to take advantage of every teachable lesson. That's where they learn the most, is in the teachable lessons. And so we are at the mercy, but we're also at the blessing. Because some people say, well, I grew up in this house, and then I moved to that house, and then I moved back to this house, especially in the farming industries, where family plots are. But in our lives, our kids have the blessing of having moved throughout a lot of different parts of Michigan, meeting a lot of different people in the state of Michigan. And one of our sons became a missionary. He's now a pastor in the Indiana area, but he became a missionary and he went to Italy. He thought it was going to be long term, but outside of that story, one of the things he said to us was, we taught him that family or home is where family is. And that following Jesus is the most important thing, regardless of whether it takes you away from, some of your immediate family. But at this time, he's got his own wife and kids. And so they're together. And so he made it easy we made it easy on him in a sense when it came to that decision of, how do I tell my parents I'm going to be leaving for a different country? We made it easy for him to make that decision without fear of how we might say, oh, don't move and don't take our grandkids from us. That's a guilt trip that parents cannot put on their adult kids.
Yeah. Yep. Wow. So, okay. So you talked about being under the United Methodist, I guess, framework. How did you transfer to the Global Methodist? Or there must be a story there.
Well, yeah, and it only is about 50 years old and more. For most that understand, the difficulties we had within the United Methodist Church, it wasn't something that just came up.
Yeah.
It had been there for a long time. And I guess there just came a moment in time when the word enough was presented. And I'm fortunate for national and global leaders who led us, into a path that we now call the Global Methodist Church. But I have to always say it this way, and I did at annual conference, my very last one at the United Methodist Conference for Michigan. I stood to rise before the 1,200 or so people there. It could have been a very contentious moment, but I stood. And I think when people saw me stand, because they also knew that I was a conservative voice in Michigan, and so not always liked, but I think they expected me to be, I don't know, mean-spirited or angry or whatever. And all I did was stand and say, thank you. Thank you for being the place where my second birth occurred. It's through the United Methodist Church that I became born again. It's through the United Methodist Church that I was discipled. It's through the United Methodist Church that I was called to ministry. It's through the United Methodist Church that I served for 26 years or so. And so I have a great love and appreciation for my roots.
Mhm.
And I still, not only just a couple of years ago, loved the United Methodist Book of Discipline, which said this is what we believe and this is how we'll behave, et cetera, et cetera. It never changed. The sad part was just the denomination was changing.
Mhm.
And, integrity is, again, one of those
Yeah.
words. Integrity says they should have been the ones to leave because they're the ones who changed. And they're the ones who, I take a covenant with all the other elders that says, I've read the Book of Discipline. I agree with it. I'll support it. I'll proclaim it. And that wasn't happening. And so I didn't leave the United Methodist Church. My United Methodist Church left me.
Oh.
But on the other hand, many of us were discouraged with what it was going to take to exit.
Yeah.
And on the other hand, because I have this opportunity as a presiding elder to oversee 21 churches in northern Michigan and get to know pastors and church members from 4 states, Michigan, Indiana, Illinois, and Wisconsin, I get to hear their stories. And I'm telling you, we spent a lot of money for our buildings. I wouldn't trade that now because we became a brand new denomination. We were born again as a denomination. And when you're at the birth of a new denomination, everything is exciting. We don't have any structures. We just have a vision. And I think if we had remained and they left, I think it would have been ho-hum. Let's go now.
Yeah.
Business as usual.
Yeah.
Only, and so I don't even know what would have happened. So I'm very grateful for my past. And I'm grateful for my present, and I'm very grateful for what the future is going to be.
Okay. Oh.
So as a presiding elder, did that happen after becoming part of the GMC, or was that was it a package deal? Did you just come in as presiding elder?
Yeah, that's a great question. So the Global Methodist Church, many liken it to we're building an airplane while we're in the air. Everything is fluid. Nothing is concrete. Everything is changing. And we had one particular pastor in our state of Michigan, Tom Anderson, who was very instrumental in the formation here in Michigan. And he was doing a lot. And somewhere along the way, the epiphany came to him, I can't keep this up. Well, all that just to say, there was a church in northern Michigan. They were going to be interviewing a pastor to become their first Global Methodist Church pastor. And some of the people who were presiding over those meetings, it was just too far of a drive. And it was within an hour from where I was in Houghton Lake. And so they did this, Jordan. And I don't know that they were being tricky on purpose, but they said, Kevin, you're an elder. Would you preside over this meeting? So I literally went to a meeting to babysit it, if you will, to get it started, to make sure it was being fruitful. And then when that was all done, I got an email saying that I'm being invited to join other presiding elders, which I still hadn't quite caught on to the terminology because it's all new terminology. And I'm on this Zoom call, this video call with 4 states and multiple people. And it was like, welcome, presiding elders. And I'm like, what? Now, I also didn't diminish it because let's just say that, I shared earlier, I'd already been a voice for the conservative values within our, former denomination. I had had some leadership with other things. So it wasn't far-fetched. But as we looked at the northern Michigan area, I was in an ideal place, kind of an Esther moment for such a time as this, for those that know the story of Esther in the Bible. And so, I didn't fight it. I didn't seek it. I didn't know I had it, but
you just grew into it.
But I'm grateful, to be able to serve because in the beginning we just all did this as volunteers. It was just, we need this kind of help. And just like people in the church volunteer to help the church, in addition to whatever they might do during the day, this is what I got to do, as to volunteer, because pastors can't volunteer in their own church. That's just called what your job is.
Yeah.
So this was my way of volunteering in the Global Methodist Church.
Okay.
Yeah, that was kind of what was making me chuckle, is because even on the structural denominational end, how consistent is that with just church operation? Somebody has a gifting, they volunteer their time. Next thing you know, they're at a meeting. Wait a minute, I'm part of leadership? What?
Yeah.
Oh,
That's
okay.
exactly.
If Dana, you can relate.
I can relate to that. Oh, all right. Well, that's perfect. Thank you for taking us through all of that. I think we'll wrap it up here, and then we have one more big question for you next podcast. So thank you, everyone, for joining us today. We come to you from the Gaylord Methodist Church. We have 2 services on Sunday, a 9 a.m. Traditional and a 10:45 contemporary. We'd love to have you join us in person. But if you can't, we also have it on Facebook and YouTube. You can join us there. If you have any questions, you can call the office, you can Google us. We also have our Christmas Eve services coming up. We will have a contemporary service on December 24th at 4 p.m. and a traditional at 6 p.m. And again, those, we'd just love to have you come in person. So thank you again for listening, and we hope you join us next week. Thanks, everyone.